Navigating Decision Makers, Best Practices for Wins. The committee era of B2B buying. If it feels harder to find the decision maker than it used to, you're reading the market correctly. Today's B2B purchases rarely hinge on one person's opinion. They move through a buying committee that's busy, risk-aware, and often internally misaligned. The practical reality is that your team has to sell into a group dynamic, not just win over a single contact. Gartner's research highlights that complex deals commonly involve 6 to 10 stakeholders, and those stakeholders only spend about 17% of the overall buying journey with vendors. That tiny window gets even smaller when buyers compare multiple options, which is why good messaging is no longer enough. We have to earn attention quickly and then expand our footprint across the committee before the buyer's internal narrative solidifies. This is also why modern outbound has to be precise about timing and relevance. When buyers prefer fewer sales interactions, every touch needs to clarify value, reduce perceived risk, and move the committee toward a shared definition of success. Whether you run an in-house team or partner with a cold-calling agency, the goal is the same: create momentum across roles, not just activity across channels. Why single-threading stalls and how deals really get decided. The most common failure pattern we see is hero contact dependency. One champion becomes the entire strategy. It feels efficient until that person goes on vacation, gets pulled into a fire drill, or simply loses internal influence, and then your deal evaporates. Single threading is fragile by design because it ignores how budget, technical approval, and risk decisions are distributed. Committee deals also introduce conflict you can't see from the outside. Gartner has reported that 74% of B2B buyer teams experience unhealthy conflict during the decision process, and teams that do reach consensus are 2.5 times more likely to view the purchase as a high-quality decision. If we're not actively facilitating alignment, we're leaving the outcome to internal politics and competing priorities. The fix is straightforward. Multi-thread every opportunity that matters by engaging at least one economic buyer, one technical stakeholder, and an end-user advocate. That doesn't mean spamming the org chart. It means tailoring a clear, role-specific reason to talk, and then building a shared storyline the committee can repeat internally. This is the same strategic muscle great outbound sales agency teams build, because without it, pipeline looks healthy while win rates quietly suffer. Build a buying group map before you ever follow up. Most teams lose late because they never built an explicit buying group plan early. Instead of treating discovery as a one-time call, we treat it as the start of a map. Who owns the pain? Who owns the budget? Who owns technical risk? And who has to live with the workflow? When your SDR agency motion includes this mapping from day one, it becomes much harder for deals to go dark without a clear reason. Start with a simple ICP-based template so reps aren't guessing. For each target segment, define the roles you typically need to win: business owner, economic buyer, technical approver, end users, plus procurement and legal security if the deal size warrants it. Then require that every qualified account has named people attached to those roles in your CRM. So qualification means committee clarity, not just interest from one title. From there, use lightweight questions that don't feel like an interrogation, but consistently uncover influence. Ask who will sign off, who will challenge the decision, and who will care most if the project succeeds. The common mistake is waiting to engage the CFO, CIO, or VP until the proposal stage. By then, internal stakeholders have already framed the problem and shortlisted preferences, and you're negotiating from behind. Multi-threaded outreach that earns attention across roles. Multi-threading works when outreach is structured, persistent, and persona relevant. A consistent cadence matters because unreachable decision makers is often just insufficient attempts in disguise. Many teams need 7 to 8 attempts on average to secure a meeting, yet a large share of reps stop after 1 or 2 touches. Persistence isn't pestering when every touch adds signal, a sharper hypothesis, stronger proof, or a clearer next step. Generic sequences are another silent killer, especially in committee deals. A CFO doesn't buy the same story as a RevOps leader, and a technical evaluator won't respond to the same framing as an end-user manager. Instead of one sequence per account, build one storyline, many angles, so each stakeholder hears the value in their language: margin protection and risk for finance, feasibility and security for technical owners, adoption and workflow for end users. This is where a cold email agency or sales development agency can dramatically improve consistency, because personalization at scale is hard to maintain manually. At SalesHive, we use role-based frameworks and our AI-powered eMod personalization to keep messages relevant without turning SDRs into full-time researchers. Done well, your cold calling services, LinkedIn outreach, and email all reinforce the same business case, just tailored to the stakeholder's lens. In complex deals, the goal isn't to find the decision maker, it's to help the decision makers agree. Turn champions, gatekeepers, and skeptics into allies. Committees don't move forward because you delivered a great demo, they move forward because someone inside the account carried the story when you weren't in the room. That's why we treat champions and gatekeepers as part of the buying group, not obstacles to get around. When you equip them well, they become the fastest path to broader stakeholder access. A common mistake is letting champions wing it internally. Even strong champions usually can't articulate ROI, risk trade-offs, and implementation impact as clearly as you can, so internal conversations turn vague and emotional. The fix is practical. Give them a concise internal deck, a forwardable summary email, and a simple ROI model they can share with finance and leadership without editing it into oblivion. Gatekeepers also respond to clarity and respect. If your ask is specific, who typically evaluates security risk for tools like this? Or what's the best way to involve procurement early? You're making their job easier rather than trying to bypass them. This approach is especially effective for teams using sales outsourcing or an outsourced sales team, because process discipline turns access into a repeatable craft instead of a personality contest. Drive consensus by selling outcomes, not features. Once you've multi-threaded, the job shifts from outreach to alignment. Committees derail when stakeholders agree the problem exists but disagree on priorities: cost versus speed, innovation versus risk, central control versus team autonomy. Your sales process should make those trade-offs explicit, then guide the group toward a decision they can defend internally. One reason this matters now is that buyers often form preferences before they ever speak with a vendor. Research from 6 Sense indicates 94% of buying groups may rank preferred vendors before first contact, and they end up purchasing from that preliminary favorite roughly 77 to 80% of the time. Your job in outbound isn't just to get in the door, it's to reshape the evaluation criteria so your strengths become the standard. Practically, we recommend building a single-page consensus pack that ties together 3 items: quantified upside, quantified risk reduction, and a clear implementation plan. When each stakeholder sees their concerns addressed in the same narrative, internal conflict drops and meetings become decision-oriented. This is also where executive-to-executive touchpoints help. Bringing a senior leader into the process earlier prevents the mistake of late-stage decision-maker engagement that forces you to relitigate priorities under deadline pressure. Measure buying group coverage like you measure pipeline. If you only measure dials, emails, and meetings booked, you can hit activity goals while still losing deals due to missing stakeholders. The more reliable approach is to track committee coverage as a first-class KPI. How many relevant roles are active, whether an economic buyer is engaged, and how often technical approval happens early versus late. This is how mature teams avoid the trap of confusing motion with progress. We recommend defining coverage targets by segment, because a mid-market SaaS deal may not require the same governance as a regulated enterprise. Then, coach reps against leading indicators, not just closed-won outcomes. Decision-maker meeting rate, number of active stakeholders per opportunity, and conversion rates once procurement enters. When you run a cold calling team or B2B cold calling services program, these metrics also keep cadences honest, because the point of persistence is stakeholder access, not noise. When these KPIs improve, win rates tend to follow, because you're systematically reducing unknowns inside the committee. They also make it easier to compare vendors and partners. An outbound sales agency should be able to show not only meetings booked, but the quality of stakeholder coverage inside those meetings. If you're evaluating pay-per-appointment lead generation or pay-per-meeting lead generation models, insist on coverage reporting so you don't pay for single-threaded conversations that rarely close. Next steps. Operationalize decision-maker navigation. Turning this into a repeatable motion starts with process, not pep talks. Build an ICP-level buying group template, require role mapping in your CRM, and standardize role-based messaging so outreach matches committee reality. Then, add a consistent review step in pipeline meetings. Which roles are unfilled, and what's our next move to engage them? If your team is already stretched, sales outsourcing can be a practical way to add coverage without slowing down your core sales cycle. SalesHive is a B2B sales agency founded in 2016, and we've booked 100,000+ meetings for 1,500+ clients by combining trained SDRs with an AI-assisted outbound platform. Our teams in the US and the Philippines are built to multi-thread from day one, so AEs walk into meetings with the committee forming, not just a single contact. Whether you hire SDRs internally or partner with an SDR agency, the goal is the same: build predictable access to economic buyers, technical evaluators, and champions across every target account. Keep your cadence persistent, your messaging role-specific, and your metrics tied to stakeholder coverage, not just activity. When decision-maker navigation becomes a system, hard to reach stops being a complaint and starts being a competitive advantage. Especially for teams looking for best cold calling services, a reliable cold calling company, or scalable list building services to support complex outbound.